They picked the wrong fight at the wrong time with the wrong woman. 3 days, that's all it took. 3 days for her to turn skeptics into believers, enemies into brothers, and a training exercise into the fight of their lives. But on that first morning when the Black Hawk touched down in a whirlwind of Colorado snow, nobody knew what was coming. They just saw a woman, and they made assumptions. The rotors beat the air like war drums. Snow spiraled outward in violent white sheets, stinging the faces of the men who stood watching from the observation deck. The peaks around them disappeared into low clouds, massive and ancient, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in their shadow. March in the Rockies. Cold enough to kill you if you made mistakes. Remote enough that help wouldn't come fast. The helicopter settled onto the landing pad with a mechanical groan. Through the side door, a figure emerged. Small, compact, movements efficient, no wasted motion. She wore civilian clothes, a dark jacket over tactical pants boots that had seen miles but weren't flashy. A single duffel bag over one shoulder, a rifle case in her other hand, long and black and serious. On the observation deck, Master Chief Frank Reeves stood with his arms crossed. 62 years old, shoulders still broad, though his back carried the weight of 4 decades in uniform. His face was weathered, lined deep around the eyes and mouth, the kind of face that had seen things, done things, survived things that broke lesser men. He watched the woman cross the landing pad, watched how she moved, light on her feet despite the gear, head on a swivel, scanning, always scanning. Professional, but that didn't change what she was. A woman, here to evaluate his program. Frank's jaw tightened. 30 years training warriors, Marines, SEALs, Rangers, men who would run into fire when everyone else ran away. And now they sent him a female evaluator. Pentagon politics. Diversity mandates. Social engineering dressed up as military readiness. Over his dead body. The woman reached the main building without looking up at the observation deck. She didn't need to look. She'd already clocked every position, every person, every line of sight. Frank didn't know that yet. He would. Inside the Mountain Warfare Training Center smelled like every military facility Frank had ever known. Floor wax and gun oil. Coffee burned down to sludge. The ghost of 1,000 boots tracking in mud and snow. The main barracks common room sprawled wide, filled with mismatched furniture and tactical gear scattered like landmines. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, throwing shadows that danced and flickered. 3 men lounged near that fire, late 20s, confident in the way young men get when they've had just enough training to be dangerous and just enough alcohol to forget caution. Federal trainees, multi-agency selection course. The kind of program that took cops and agents and tried to forge them into something harder. Cole sat forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, telling a story with his hands. Tall, athletic build, college football, shoulders gone slightly soft from desk work. The kind of guy who'd been the best in every room until he walked into rooms where best wasn't good enough. Blake sprawled on the couch, laughing at whatever Cole was saying. Quieter, follower type. Good at his job, but always looking to stronger personalities for direction. Travis stood near the window, beer in hand, staring out at the mountains with eyes that held something harder than the others. Marine washout. Made it through boot camp, washed out of infantry training. Spent 5 years trying to prove he belonged in uniforms he'd never earned the right to wear. The door opened. Cold air rushed in, and with it, she entered. Kate Hartwell, though they didn't know her name yet, didn't know anything except what they saw. A woman maybe 5'7", athletic but not imposing. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Glasses, a face that could disappear in a crowd, which was exactly the point. She moved to the check-in desk, set her bags down, with the kind of care that suggested expensive equipment inside. The admin clerk, a civilian contractor with dead eyes and a coffee stain on his collar, barely glanced up. Behind her, Cole nudged Blake, gestured with his chin. Blake looked over, smirked. Travis turned from the window. Kate pulled out an ID badge, laminated, government issue. The clerk scanned it, handed her a room key, pointed down the hallway without a word. No briefing, no welcome, no one looking twice. She picked up her bags, started across the common room. Cole stood stretched, stepped directly into her path. Not aggressive, just casual enough to have deniability. His elbow caught her shoulder. The paper coffee cup she'd just picked up from the counter lurched, and hot liquid splashed across her hand, the floor of the entry rug, dark stains spreading, steam rising. Cole didn't step back, just looked down at the mess with theatrical surprise. "Easy there, new girl," he said, voice loud enough to carry. "Not exactly combat footing, are we?" Blake laughed from the couch. "Might need to bubble wrap the analyst next time." Travis said nothing, just watched, eyes flat and cold. Kate looked down at her hand, coffee dripping from her fingers, then at the spilled cup, then at Cole's face. She didn't speak, didn't react, just bent down, grabbed napkins from the counter, and cleaned the spill in silence. Methodical, thorough. When she stood, she didn't meet Cole's eyes, just stepped around him and continued down the hallway. The three men watched her go. "Admin," Blake said. "Has to be." "Logistics, maybe," Cole added. "Definitely not ops." But as Kate disappeared around the corner, something shifted in her shoulders. Relaxed, like she'd passed some kind of test they hadn't known they were giving. And in her mind, a file opened. 3 entries. Names unknown, but characteristics logged. Cole leader type, insecure about authority. Blake follower needs validation. Travis actually dangerous, something broken inside. Weight distribution, fighting stances, how they moved. She'd need that information soon. Her room was small, functional, metal frame bed, government-issued desk, single window, looking out at mountains that stretched forever. Kate set her rifle case on the bed with reverence, snapped the latches. Inside, custom foam cut to exact specifications. AMK-18 CQBR, close quarters battle receiver. 10.3-inch barrel, Daniel defense furniture, aimpoint T2 red dot sight, suppressor threaded and waiting, magazine loaded with 77 grain OTM rounds, not standard issue, personal weapon. The kind of rifle that cost more than most people's cars and shot tighter groups than most people could dream. She lifted it out, checked the chamber. Clear. Press checked the extractor, function check on the bolt. Disassembled it with movements so smooth they looked like dance. Bolt carrier group, gas tube, firing pin. Each piece inspected under the light, checked for carbon buildup, metal fatigue, anything that might cause failure when failure meant death. She cleaned what didn't need cleaning, lubricated what didn't need lubrication. Reassembled in 90 seconds, her eyes closed, fingers moving from muscle memory, carved deep by a decade of repetition. Then she set it aside and unpacked the rest. Plate carrier level 4 ceramic plates, night vision mount, radio headset, tactical med kit, the contents of a bag that belonged to someone who expected to bleed. Outside her window, the observation deck. Frank Reeves stood there, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, watching her window. He couldn't see details through the frosted glass, but he saw movement, saw the outline of her working. Something about those movements made him pause, made old instincts whisper. He shook it off, raised his coffee, drank bitter fuel that had been reheated twice. She was an evaluator, a bureaucrat with a badge. Pentagon sent them every few years. They showed up, checked boxes, wrote reports nobody read, and disappeared back into the machinery of military administration. This one wouldn't be different. He was wrong about that. The briefing room smelled like old wood and gun solvent. Maps covered the walls. Topographical charts of the surrounding mountains marked with training routes and emergency extraction points. A whiteboard showed the week's schedule, dense with acronyms and grid coordinates. Frank sat behind a battered desk reading reports he had read a dozen times. The door opened without a knock. Kate entered, still in civilian clothes, but something had changed. The way she carried herself. Posture straighter, eyes direct. She moved to the center of the room and stood feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped loosely behind her back. Parade rest, perfect form. Frank looked up, closed his folder, studied her for a long moment. "You're the evaluator," he said, statement not question. "Yes, Master Chief." His eyebrows rose slightly. She knew his rank, knew enough to use it correctly. Most civilians didn't. "You look like you should be teaching yoga," he said. "Testing, always testing." Kate didn't react, didn't smile, didn't bristle, just held his gaze. "Master Chief Reeves," she said. Your reputation precedes you. 4 decades of service, 3 combat deployments. You trained the men who took down bin Laden's compound guards. You personally designed the cold weather mountain warfare curriculum used by every special operations unit in the military. Frank's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe. She'd done her homework. I don't need evaluation, he said, voice harder now. I need warriors, not politicians in uniform. Good, Kate replied, because I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to see if your program produces operators or just loud mouths who can't back up their confidence. Silence stretched between them. Outside wind rattled the windows. Somewhere distant, someone shouted commands. Frank leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. What's your background, he asked. Pentagon desk jockey policy analyst. Another Harvard graduate who thinks reading about war is the same as fighting one. Kate smiled then, small, didn't reach her eyes. I'll let my performance speak for itself, Master Chief. When do we start? Frank wanted to hate her, wanted to dismiss her, but something about that smile, about the way she stood, about the calm in her voice reminded him of something. Someone. A memory he couldn't quite place. Tomorrow, he said, 0530, rifle qualification. Hope you've held a weapon before. Once or twice, Kate said. She turned and left before he could respond. That night, Kate sat at her desk, a single lamp throwing yellow light across photographs. Her father, Captain James Hartwell, United States Marine Corps, young in these pictures, strong, wearing the uniform like he was born to it. Desert Storm, 1991. The pictures were faded now, colors bleeding towards sepia. Her father with his unit. His father kneeling in sand beside burning oil wells. Her father receiving a medal, though Kate had never known for what. He'd never talked about the war, never talked about the things he'd seen, the things he'd done. He'd just come home with a limp and eyes that looked past you, sometimes focused on distances only he could see. Kate touched the photograph, traced the outline of his face. She'd been 4 years old when he came back from Kuwait. Old enough to remember him leaving in uniform, not old enough to understand why. Old enough to see he'd changed when he returned, not old enough to know that war changes everyone. He died when she was 26. Heart attack. Quick. The doctor said his body had been running on borrowed time for years, shrapnel embedded near his spine, nerve damage, complications that accumulated slowly until they didn't. At the funeral, old Marines came. Men Kate had never met. They told stories, talked about CAFG, about fire-base objectives with alphabet soup designations, about Captain Hartwell pulling a wounded Marine out of a kill zone while machine gun fire tore the air apart around them. Kate had listened and realized she'd never known her father at all, just loved him. Now she was here in these mountains, carrying a name that meant something to men who'd served with him, carrying expectations she hadn't asked for and responsibilities that felt like gravity. She was so tired of proving herself, so tired of walking into rooms where men looked at her and saw everything except a warrior, tired of fighting twice as hard for half the recognition, tired of being the first, the only, the exception that proved the rule. But tired didn't matter. Tired was a luxury. There was work to do. Kate slipped the photo back into her bag, stood, stretched. Tomorrow would come early and she needed to be sharp. She didn't know Frank Reeves was standing outside her door at that exact moment, hand raised to knock, frozen by what he'd just glimpsed through the window. That photograph, Captain James Hartwell, the man who'd saved Frank's life 33 years ago in a desert half a world away. Morning came cold and sharp. The sun hadn't cleared the peaks yet, just bled gray light across snow that crunched underfoot. The rifle range stretched out behind the main facility, berms of packed earth in wooden target frames at intervals stretching to 500 yards. 24 trainees assembled in loose formation, breath fogging, rifles slung or cradled, waiting for the whistle that would start qualification runs. Kate stood near the back, same unremarkable civilian jacket, ballistic glasses now tinted slightly. She'd borrowed a standard issue M4 from the armory, basic iron sights, nothing fancy. It wasn't her Mach 18, but a rifle was a rifle. She'd qualified expert on every weapon system the military issued. Could shoot sub-MOA groups at 1,000 yards. But nobody here knew that. They just saw a woman holding a rifle like maybe she'd been to a range once or twice. Cole stood front and center, his own rifle accessorized with vertical grip and magnified optic. Showing off. Blake beside him adequate but unremarkable. Travis off to the side, handling his weapon with the kind of familiarity that came from real training, even if he'd never finished it. Frank climbed onto the observation platform, megaphone in hand. "Gentlemen," he called out, voice carrying across the cold morning. "And others, standard qualification, 500 yards, 10 rounds. You know the drill. Top 3 scores get first pick of duty assignments this rotation. Bottom 3 get to clean the latrines." Laughter rippled through the formation. "Cole," Frank called. You're up." Cole stepped to the firing line with swagger, dropped into prone position, rifle tucked tight into shoulder. Controlled breathing, sight picture. Frank gave the signal. 10 shots, methodical cadence. Brass ejecting, glinting in weak light. Smoke drifting from the muzzle. When he finished, Frank glassed the target through binoculars. "It hits 2 near misses," Frank called out. "Respectable." Cole stood grinning. Accepted fist bumps from Blake and Travis. Respectable was good. Respectable meant he'd beaten most of the guys here. 3 more shooters went. Scores varied. 6 hits, 7. One poor bastard only managed 4, and the group whistled and jeered until Frank shut them down with a look. Then Frank's gaze found Kate, standing quiet at the back, rifle held loosely. "Analyst for," he called, using her fake designation like it was a joke. "You're up." The group turned, some smirking, others curious. Kate walked to the firing line without hurry, set the M4 down carefully, dropped to prone, adjusted her position, shifted her hips, found the pocket where the rifle settled naturally into her shoulder. Cole leaned toward Blake. "This should be entertaining." Kate worked the charging handle, chambered around, eyes downrange, focusing past the front sight post to the target, a tiny rectangle of white 5 football fields away. Wind, northeast at 12 knots, gusting to 15. She'd read it in the flags, felt it on her cheek. Temperature dropping, barometric pressure stable. Elevation 7,000 feet, air thin enough that bullets flew different than at sea level. She adjusted her sight picture. Breathed in, let half out. Held. First shot. The rifle bucked gently. Brass spun away. Kate worked the trigger again. Smooth press, surprise break. Again. Again. Mechanical rhythm. No pause. No hesitation. 10 rounds in maybe 15 seconds. She cleared the weapon. Stood. Stepped back. Frank raised his binoculars. Studied the target for a long moment. Lowered them slowly. His face had changed. The skepticism gone. Something else there now. Recognition, maybe. Or the beginning of respect. 10 hits, he said. Voice quieter than before. Center mass, grouping under 2 inches. The range went silent. Kate didn't react, just stood there waiting for permission to leave the line. Cole stared, jaw slightly open. Blake blinked like he'd just watched someone pull a rabbit from a hat. Travis's eyes had gone narrow, calculating, tired seeing her differently now. Frank set the binoculars down. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that, analyst?" Kate looked at him directly. "Practice, Master Chief. Lots of practice, Utamit." She slung the rifle and walked off the line. Behind her, men muttered, confused, some impressed, others resentful. The natural order had been disrupted, and they didn't like it. Frank watched her go, that nagging feeling back again. The sense that he knew something about her, something important his conscious mind hadn't caught yet. He'd figure it out soon. The afternoon brought rope work. Rappelling drills off the facility's training tower, a 30-foot structure designed to simulate cliff descents. Harnesses, distributed carabiners, check belay lines secured. Kate stood in line for gear distribution. When her turn came, the equipment sergeant handed over a harness with barely a glance. She took it, stepped aside to inspect. The main buckle looked secure, but something caught her eye, the secondary attachment point. The carabiner connection was loose. Not obviously, just enough that under dynamic load, under real stress, it might slip, might fail. Kate glanced around, found Travis watching her from across the yard. He looked away quickly, but not before she caught it. The smirk, the knowing. Sabotage. She said nothing, just rethreaded the connection, tightened it with precise twists, tested the load. Satisfied, she pulled the harness on and joined the line. Frank was running the drill personally. Safety paramount. He'd seen men die from rope failures, had nightmares about bodies falling and the sounds they made hitting ground. Partner up, he called. One descends, one belays. Switch on my command. People paired off naturally. Friends with friends. Cole with Blake. Travis finding another trainee. Kate stood alone. Frank noticed. Of course he noticed. Everything on his range he saw. Hartwell, he said, using her actual name for the first time. You're with me. Kate walked over, met his eyes. He gestured to the tower. You anchor, he said. I'll descend first. Show you the technique. I know the technique, Master Chief. Then this should be easy. Frank clipped in, checked his connections twice, and backed over the edge. Kate took tension on the belay rope. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. Brake hand maintaining pressure. Guide hand feeding rope smoothly. When Frank weighted the line, she adjusted automatically, keeping tension perfect. Not too loose, not too tight. Frank descended in controlled drops. At the bottom, he unclipped and looked up. Kate was already adjusting the rope, preparing for her own descent. Something about her movements made him pause. She descended like she'd done it 1,000 times, no hesitation, no uncertainty. Smooth drops, feet touching the wall light as a dancer. At the bottom, she landed with bent knees, absorbing impact and unclipped while already looking for the next task. Frank stepped closer, kept his voice low. You've got training, he said. Statement, not question. Everyone here has training, Master Chief. Not like that. That's special operations muscle memory. I've seen it 100 times. Kate met his gaze, didn't confirm, didn't deny. Your father, Frank said quietly, testing. Was he military? Something flickered in Kate's eyes. They're burned and gone. Why do you ask? Because you move like someone I used to know. Before Kate could respond, shouting erupted across the yard. One of the trainees had botched his descent, swung wild, crashed into the tower. Not seriously hurt, but embarrassed and angry, Frank moved to handle it, and the moment passed. But he was close now, close to putting pieces together. That evening, Kate walked the perimeter. Needed air, needed space from walls and eyes, and the constant pressure of being watched, evaluated, judged. Snow crunched under her boots. The sky had cleared, stars emerging in crystalline profusion. Out here, away from city light, you could see the Milky Way like a river of silver. She pulled out her phone. Signal was weak but present. Dialed. 3 rings, then a young voice bright with excitement. Aunt Kate? Kate smiled despite herself. Hey, Munchkin, you still up? Mom said I could stay up until you called. Did you fight any bad guys today? Not today, sweetheart, just training. When do you come home? You promised you'd be at my recital. Kate closed her eyes. The recital, spring concert at the elementary school. She'd promised, swore she wouldn't miss it like she'd missed the last 3. 2 more days, Kate said. Then I'm on a plane home. I'll be there. Front row, I promise. You always promise. The words stung because they were true. They talked for a few more minutes. About school, about friends, about the solo her niece was learning on violin. Normal things, human things, the kind of life Kate had sacrificed for the uniform she wore and the battles she fought. When she hung up, Kate stood in silence, breath fogging, stars watching, wondering not for the first time what she was doing, why she kept choosing this life, why she kept walking into rooms where she wasn't wanted, proving herself to men who didn't think she belonged. Because someone had to be first. Someone had to kick the door open. And her father had taught her that hard things were worth doing precisely because they were hard. Footsteps behind her. Crunching through snow, Kate turned. 3 figures emerged from the shadows near the generator shed. Cole, Blake, Travis, walking with the loose confidence of men who'd been drinking, who'd decided together that something needed to be done. They spread out as they approached, not aggressive yet, just positioning. Cole spoke first. Working late analyst. Just making a phone call, Kate said, voice neutral. Right, Blake said. Tell your friends at headquarters we're not interested in being spied on. Kate didn't respond, started to walk past them, back toward the facility. Travis stepped into her path, blocking it deliberately. You don't get to show up for 3 days, he said, and start evaluating people who've bled for this job, people who've earned their place. Kate stopped 3 feet from him. I'm not here for you. I'm doing my job. Step aside. Or what? Travis asked. Cole moved behind her. Blake flanked left. Classic formation. Surround, intimidate, make her feel small and afraid. Kate didn't feel small, didn't feel afraid. She felt tired. Tired of this exact scenario playing out in different locations with different faces, but always the same script. Don't stand behind me, she said quietly. Cole laughed. She's got rules. Travis reached out, grabbed her sleeve. Not violently, just enough to stop her movement, enough to establish control. Kate looked down at his hand, then gently, almost politely, peeled his fingers away one by one and let them drop. You don't want to do this, she said. You threatening me? Travis asked. No, Kate said. I'm warning you. Blake stepped closer from behind. Kate felt him more than saw him, felt his presence, his weight, the way he breathed. Cute, Blake said. The wind shifted, blew snow across the clearing in ghostly patterns. Somewhere in the forest, a branch cracked under ice weight. Kate exhaled once. Fog rose from her mouth. You've got two choices. Walk away now or learn a lesson the hard way. And if we choose option 3, Cole asked, voice harder now, confidence building on itself, 3 against 1 night, and isolation giving him courage. Kate's stance shifted, subtle, weight redistributing, hands lowering slightly, not into fists, just ready. There is no option 3, she said. Cole moved first, a shove, hard, 2 hands against her shoulder trying to send her back into the snowbank, trying to put her down, make her understand. Kate absorbed it, stepped back, boots finding purchase. She didn't fall, stood slowly brushing snow from her jacket with one hand. No anger in her face, no fear, just calculation. Blake laughed behind her. Maybe someone should have taught her balance. They stepped closer, drawn by her silence, emboldened by her stillness. Travis grabbed her wrist, firm grip, trying to control. She let him hold it for a heartbeat, then stepped back slightly, shifting her center of gravity, and his grip lost leverage. His boots slipped on ice beneath snow. He staggered. Careful, Kate said quietly. Ground's not stable. But they were past listening, past reason. Cole swung, not a punch, just a hard palm strike toward her shoulder, meant to cheer her, meant to remind. Kate's arm came up, fast, caught his wrist midair, hand closing around it like a lock snapping shut. Precise grip, thumb over the radius bone. Controlled. Cole tried to pull back. Nothing moved. He yanked harder. Kate's hand didn't budge. The laughter stopped. Blake stared. Let go of him. Kate turned her head slightly, still holding Cole's wrist. You've already made one mistake. Don't make the second. Then she released him, not throwing, not pushing, just letting go. Cole stumbled back 2 steps. His wrist was red from compression. He flexed it, staring at her like she'd changed into something else, something he didn't understand. Kate turned away, not retreating, just done. She took 3 steps toward the facility. Travis grabbed her from behind, arm around her bicep, body pressing forward, trying for a takedown, trying to use size and strength. He never finished the move. Kate stopped, froze in place. Her spine straightened, her stance widened fractionally, her hands lowered. The cold wind hissed through trees. Somewhere distant, a coyote called. Last chance, Kate said, voice flat, empty of emotion. Walk away. Cole's voice cracked slightly. She's bluffing. Kate tilted her chin down, not to speak, to listen, to measure exactly where each of them stood. Then she whispered, so quiet they barely heard. You just picked a fight with the wrong girl. Travis swung first, overhand right, clumsy, fueled by alcohol and pride more than technique. Kate stepped inside the arc, turned her hip, let his momentum carry him forward. Her left hand guided the strike off course with a redirecting palm check to his shoulder. Her right arm swept low, catching behind his knee. One shift, one twist. Travis went sideways into snow. Hard, the sound of air leaving lungs. Blake charged next, no calculation, just movement. Kate pivoted to face him, let him close distance. then swept his front leg mid-stride. His boot lost traction. He flipped, forward arms windmilling, and landed flat on his back. The sound echoed between buildings like a dropped sandbag. Cole hesitated, half a second, then lunged. Bear hug attempt, arms wide, legs driving. Kate let him close, lowered her center, slipped inside his reach, spun behind him, used his forward momentum to send him face first into the snowbank. He hit with a muffled grunt, knees first, snow scattered. Kate stood in the center of the clearing, coat billowing slightly in wind, breathing steady, slow exhales fogging the air. She hadn't thrown a punch, hadn't raised her voice. No rage, no adrenaline, just movement, control. Travis groaned, tried to sit up. Blake was on hands and knees, coughing. Cole pushed himself up, covered in frost and confusion. "What the hell was that?" Blake rasped. Kate didn't answer. They rose together, three silhouettes, angry now, rattled, their confidence shattered but pride forcing them forward. Cole came from the front. Travis flanked right. Blake circled left. Kate moved first this time. Cole reached for her. She trapped his wrist, stepped inside, folded his elbow across her shoulder. Wrist lock. Textbook. He dropped to his knees instantly, gasping as his shoulder compressed. Blake swung at her head. She ducked, caught his wrist, used his momentum to whip him sideways into the shed wall. Metallic thud. He slid down, stunned. Travis tried to circle. She met him with a shoulder leverage redirect. Detainee control technique. His own weight folded him forward into snow. 20 seconds. Start to finish, then silence. Kate looked down at her coat, brushed snow from the sleeve. No tears, no stains. Satisfied, she turned to walk away. Behind her, a boot shifted. Someone stirred. "Who are you?" Blake shouted, voice cracking, half spitting snow. Kate didn't look back, didn't say a word, just kept walking. This time, no one followed. From the shadow of the maintenance shed, Frank Reeves watched. He'd been there the whole time, witnessed everything, seen techniques he'd learned 30 years ago in training that most people had never heard of, seen control and precision that came from years of practice against opponents who wanted to hurt you, really hurt you. He waited until Kate disappeared into the facility, then stepped out of shadow and approached the three men struggling to stand. "Master Chief," Cole started. Frank held up a hand, silence. "Go to medical," he said. "Get checked out. File no reports. Speak to no one about this." But she did exactly what she's trained to do when three hostiles attacked her at night in an isolated location. Frank's voice was iron. "You initiated. She defended. You're lucky she showed restraint. Now get out of my sight before I file charges myself." They limped away. Frank watched them go, then turned and walked slowly back to his office. He had phone calls to make, questions to ask, because he knew now. Knew what he should have seen from the beginning. That wasn't an analyst, that wasn't a bureaucrat. That was an operator, and he was willing to bet his pension she was the best kind. The kind who'd earned every hard inch of ground she stood on. In his office, Frank pulled up personnel files, found Kate's record, logistics analyst, naval assignment, temporary duty, all the right words that meant nothing. He picked up his phone, dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Old friend, still had connections in the special operations community. 3 rings. A gruff voice answered. "Frank, Jesus, it's been what, 5 years?" "I need information," Frank said. "Quiet inquiry. Name is Kate Hartwell, Navy, currently assigned to my facility as an evaluator. I need to know what she really is." Hartwell. A pause. Keyboard clicking. "Frank, I can't. Just tell me if I'm right." More clicking. A long silence. Then a low whistle. "Where is she right now?" his friend asked. "On my facility." "Why? Because if she's who I think she is, you've got a SEAL team operator on your base. Lieutenant Commander. One of the first women through Bud ECS. Her father was Captain James Hartwell," Frank said, voice distant. "3rd Marines, Desert Storm." "You knew him." "He saved my life," Frank said. "CAFG 1991. I was a kid, corporal, pinned down by machine gun fire. Captain Hartwell came back for me and 5 others. Took shrapnel in his back, pulling us out. Then you know where she gets it from. Frank, she's the real deal. What's she doing there? Frank looked out his window, at the mountains, at the facility he'd built and defended and poured his life into, at the place where he'd been so certain he was right about everything. I think, he said slowly, she's here to teach me something about what I've been too stubborn to see. He hung up, sat in darkness. Thought about Captain James Hartwell, about a debt unpaid for 33 years, about a daughter carrying her father's legacy into fights he couldn't have imagined. And Frank Reeves, 62 years old, 4 decades in uniform, made a decision. Tomorrow, everything would change. Dawn broke cold and uncertain over the mountains. The kind of morning where breath froze in your chest and everything felt brittle, fragile, like the world might crack if you pressed too hard. Frank Reeves stood in the administration building, arms crossed, watching 3 men shuffle into his office. Cole walked stiffly, favoring his left side. Blake's eye had darkened overnight, purple blooming across his cheekbone. Travis moved like every joint hurt, which they probably did. Behind his desk sat Colonel Warren, the facility commander. 58 years old, West Point graduate, 2 decades of logistics command. A good officer who played by rules and expected others to do the same. He looked at the 3 men with the expression of a principal dealing with schoolyard fighters. "Sit," Frank said. Not an invitation. They sat. None of them met his eyes. Colonel Warren opened a folder. Maintenance crew found evidence of an altercation near the generator shed. 3 sets of tracks, signs of struggle. Want to tell me what happened? Silence stretched. Cole glanced at Blake. Blake stared at his boots. Travis's jaw worked, but no words came. Frank stepping forward. "I'll tell you what happened, sir. These 3 decided to confront our evaluator. Alone. At night. In an isolated location. They initiated physical contact. She defended herself, appropriately." Warren's eyebrows rose. "Appropriately look at them." "Yes, sir, appropriately. Because they're sitting here bruised instead of being carried out in body bags. She showed restraint I'm not sure they deserved." Cole flinched at that, some part of him understanding maybe for the first time how badly things could have gone, how much worse than bruises and wounded pride. Warren closed the folder. "Lean back. You 3 understand what you did constitutes assault on federal property against a military officer conducting official duties. I could have you arrested, charged. Your careers would be over before lunch." Travis spoke finally, voice rough. "We understand, sir. Do you, because from where I sit, you ambushed a woman half your size, 3-on-1, and got your asses handed to you. That's not just criminal. It's embarrassing." Blake's face flushed red. Warren looked at Frank. "Your recommendation, Master Chief." Frank was quiet for a long moment, studying the 3 men, seeing past the bravado to something underneath. Fear, shame, the beginning of understanding. "Give them a choice," Frank said. "Face charges and spend the next decade explaining this in job interviews, or complete the training or rotation under Lieutenant Commander Hartwell's direct instruction. Learn from someone who's forgotten more about being a warrior than they'll ever know." Cole's head snapped up. "Lieutenant Commander." "Navy SEAL," Frank said, voice carrying weight. "One of the first women through Bud's Hell Week. Active duty special operations. She's not here to take notes, gentlemen. She's here because the Pentagon wanted an operator to evaluate whether this program produces people worthy of that title." The room went very still. Blake whispered, "Holy shit." Warren studied each face in turn. "The choice is yours. Decide now." They looked at each other. 3 men who'd spent 48 hours convinced they were the toughest people in the room, who'd mocked and sabotaged and finally attacked someone they thought was weak, someone they'd been so certain didn't belong. Someone who'd been holding back the entire time, showing mercy they hadn't earned. Cole spoke first. "We'll stay. We'll train." "You'll do more than train," Frank said. "You'll learn. You'll listen. And you'll show the respect she's already earned by doing what you've only pretended to do." "Understood." "Yes, Master Chief." They filed out. Frank watched them go. Warren waited until the door closed. "You think they can be salvaged?" Warren asked. "Captain Hartwell once told me something," Frank said, "in Kafji after he pulled me out of that kill zone. He said the difference between a good Marine and a great one isn't natural talent. It's being broken down and choosing to rebuild yourself better than before." "Her father said that," Frank nodded, And if his daughter is half the person he was, those three boys have a chance to learn what real strength looks like. The rifle range again, but different now. The air felt charged, electric. Every trainee gathered, but the dynamic had shifted. They'd heard rumors, whispered stories about what happened in the snow, about three men who tried to intimidate the quiet analyst and ended up in the infirmary. Kate stood at the instructor platform beside Frank. She wore tactical pants, now boots, a close-fitting long-sleeve shirt that suggested the athletic build underneath. Hair pulled back tight. No glasses today. Eyes clear and direct. Frank addressed the formation. Change of plans. Lieutenant Commander Hartwell will be conducting advanced CQB training for the next 2 days. You will address her by rank. You will follow her instructions. Anyone who has a problem with that can pack their bags now. No one moved, but every eye was on Kate, calculating, reassessing, seeing her for the first time as something other than a bureaucrat with a clipboard. Kate stepped forward. Close quarters battle is not about size or strength. It's about angles, timing, and violence of action applied with precision. I'm going to teach you techniques used by SEAL team operators in Fallujah, Ramadi, and Mogadishu. Pay attention, ask questions, leave your ego in the barracks. She demonstrated first on Frank, showed how to clear a corner, how to work threshold angles, how to move through fatal funnels without silhouetting. Her movements were fluid, economical, no wasted motion. Then she pulled Cole forward. Try to grab me. Cole hesitated. Ma'am, I don't want to. That's Lieutenant Commander, and you already tried 2 nights ago. Difference is now I'm going to show you why you failed. Cole reached. Kate intercepted his arm, redirected, used his momentum to spin him into a control position. She walked through it slowly, explaining leverage points, how wrist rotation could compromise balance, how small adjustments in angle multiplied force exponentially. Again, she said, faster this time. They worked for an hour, Kate correcting form, demonstrating variations, building muscle memory. Blake and Travis joined eventually. No jokes now, no mockery, just intense focus as they learned from someone who'd used these techniques when bullets were real and mistakes were fatal. During a water break, Blake approached Kate quietly. Lieutenant Commander, I need to apologize for everything. I was wrong. Kate looked at him. Apology noted. Now show me you mean it by becoming better than you were yesterday. Travis came next, harder for him. Pride was a weight he carried. What you did the other night, that was real training. Tier 1 stuff. I washed out of Marines because I wasn't good enough. Spent years trying to prove I belonged. Never realized belonging means accepting you have more to learn. Everyone has more to learn, Kate said. The best operators I know are the ones who understand that. Frank watched from a distance. Watched 3 men transformed by humility into something approaching actual students. Watched Kate teach with patience he wouldn't have shown. She could have destroyed them. Could have had them arrested, discharged, ruined. Instead, she was making them better. Captain Hartwell had been the same way. Frank remembered. After Kafji, after the medevac choppers took the wounded out, the captain had gathered the survivors. Young Marines who'd frozen under fire, who'd made mistakes that nearly cost lives. He hadn't screamed, hadn't punished. He'd taught, explained what they'd done wrong and why, showed them how to do better, gave them another chance to prove themselves. Frank had never forgotten that lesson. Never forgotten the captain's face as he said, "We don't throw good Marines away because they made mistakes. We build them back up, make them stronger. That's what leaders do." And now the captain's daughter was doing the same thing, teaching when she could be punishing, building when she could be destroying. Frank felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. That afternoon, Kate demonstrated weapon systems. They gathered in the armory surrounded by racks of rifles and pistols, ammunition crates stacked floor to ceiling. She lifted an M4 carbine, standard issue. This weapon has been in service since 1994. Effective range 500 yards. Cyclic rate 700 to 900 rounds per minute. It will kill a man at 400 meters if you know what you're doing. She field stripped in, pieces laid out in precise order. Upper receiver, bolt carrier group, charging handle, lower receiver, magazine well, buffer spring. Every operator needs to know this weapon so well you can assemble it in darkness while someone's shooting at you. Then she moved to a different rifle, shorter barrel, suppressor attached. MK18 CQBR, 10.3-inch barrel. What I carry down range, designed for close quarters. The suppressor doesn't make it silent, but it protects your hearing and reduces muzzle flash. At night in a building, muzzle flash can blind you for seconds you don't have. She explained ballistics, how 77-grain bullets perform differently than 55-grain, why barrel length affected velocity, how suppressors change back pressure and require different gas system tuning. The trainees listened like disciples. This wasn't theory. This was knowledge earned in rooms where mistakes meant body bags. Cole asked, "You've used that rifle in combat?" Kate's expression didn't change. "Yes." "Can you tell us about it?" "No," she said simply. "Most of what I've done is classified. What I can tell you is that when the time comes to use these skills for reals, you'll understand why we train this hard, why details matter, why there's no such thing as good enough when lives depend on your accuracy." Frank added context. In Desert Storm, we were still carrying M16A2s, 20-inch barrels, heavier, less maneuverable in vehicles and buildings. But the fundamentals haven't changed. Sight alignment, trigger control, breathing. The lieutenant commander learned from the same doctrine I learned 30 years ago. We just have better tools now. Kate nodded. The Master Chief is right. Technology changes. Human physiology doesn't. You still need to control your heartbeat. Still need to make the shot when your hands are shaking and someone's shooting back. The weapon doesn't make the warrior. The warrior makes the weapon effective. They practice dry fire drills. Kate correcting stances, adjusting grips, teaching the small things that separated adequate from excellent. Blake's trigger finger placement. Travis's cheek weld. Cole's breathing rhythm. Hours passed, the sun tracked across the sky toward the peaks. When they finally secured weapons and filed out, Frank and Kate were alone in the armory. Frank organized ammunition cans. Kate cleaned rifle parts with an oiled cloth. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Frank spoke. "Your father taught me to shoot," he said. 1991. I was adequate before Kuwait. After he showed me his techniques, I made expert qualification every year until I retired from combat duty. Kate's hands stilled. He never talked about the war, about what he did there. "He saved 6 Marines in Kafji," Frank said. "Machine gun position had us pinned, artillery falling, Iraqi armor pushing up the road. We were dead if we stayed, dead if we moved. Captain Hartwell came back through a kill zone under fire, pulled each of us out in one at a time, took shrapnel in his back on the last trip. They medevaced him out, but he refused evacuation until all of us were secure." Kate set down the cloth. "I never knew the details, just that he was wounded, that he came home different." "War changes everyone," Frank said. "But some people it reveals what was always there. Your father was the bravest man I ever served with. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he was terrified and did it anyway. He used to tell me something," Kate said quietly, "before soccer games, before school presentations. Anything that made me nervous. He'd say, 'Katie, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding the mission matters more than the fear.'" Sounds like him. They were quiet again. Outside, trainees shouted. Someone laughed. Normal sounds of people living. "I'm sorry I doubted you," Frank said. "When you arrived, when I saw a woman and assumed you couldn't understand what we do here, I was wrong. Your father would be ashamed of me." "No," Kate said. "He'd understand. He fought those same battles, proving himself to people who didn't think he belonged. He was Irish Catholic in a Marine Corps that promoted Protestants. Young captain in a war run by old colonels. He understood what it means to earn respect one day at a time. He'd be proud of you, what you've become." Kate smiled sadly. "I hope so. I'll never know for sure. He died before I made it through buds, before I earned my trident. I like to think he's watching somehow, that he knows I finished what he started." Frank wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but some grief was too deep for words. So he just nodded, and they went back to work, 2 warriors separated by generation but connected by the same fight. Evening brought everyone to the briefing room. Colonel Warren stood at the front beside a topographical map. Red lines marked routes through mountain terrain. Grid coordinates labeled key positions. Final exercise, Warren announced. 72 hours. You'll insert here. He tapped a spot on the map. Move 15 miles through mountain terrain to this objective. Mock enemy facility. Your mission is reconnaissance and simulated assault. Rules of engagement training, ammunition only. Objective personnel are contractors wearing safety vests. Anyone hits a contractor with live rounds gets court-martialed. Murmurs through the room. 72 hours in March Mountains. Snow. Cold. Minimal resupply. This was the culmination. The test that separated people who could endure from people who could operate. Warren continued. You'll split into 2 teams. Master Chief Reeves leads Team 1. Lieutenant Commander Hartwell leads Team 2. This is peer evaluation. How you perform here determines your final assessment. Frank caught Kate's eye. She nodded slightly. They discussed this, agreed that competition would push performance. But Frank felt something else. Unease, like an itch between his shoulder blades. Combat instinct whispering that something was wrong. Sir, Frank said, what's the threat assessment? Any intel on hostile activity in the area? Warren consulted his notes. Local law enforcement reported possible hunter activity 3 days ago. No confirmed sightings since. Weather should keep anyone sensible off the mountain. Should, Frank repeated. Is there a problem, Master Chief? Frank wanted to say yes, wanted to explain the feeling. But feelings weren't intelligence, weren't actionable. Just the paranoia of an old Marine who'd survived by trusting his gut. No, sir, Frank said. Just confirming protocols. After the briefing, Kate found Frank outside. They stood in darkness, watching stars emerge. You felt it too, Kate said. Statement not question. Felt what? Something's wrong. The timing, the isolation, the lack of communication protocols during the exercise. Frank looked at her. Why would command set us up? I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe I'm paranoid from too many ops where the intelligence was wrong. Or maybe your instincts are telling you what mine are telling me, that this exercise is about to become something else. Kate was quiet for a moment. Then we prepare for worst case. Standard load plus extra ammunition. Make sure everyone has live rounds accessible, even though the exercise calls for training ammo only. Better to have it and not need it. You've done this before, Frank said. Walked into situations that felt wrong. Somalia, 2023. We were supposed to be doing humanitarian coordination. Turned out warlords had other plans. Good instincts kept my team alive when the shooting started. Frank nodded. Desert Storm. We were told Kafji was secure. Iraqi armor had withdrawn. 24 hours later, they rolled back in and we were caught with our pants down. Captain Hartwell's instincts saved us. Then we trust our instincts now. Prepare the teams. Make sure everyone's sharp. They stood together, 2 generations of warriors watching darkness gather in the mountains. Somewhere out there, something waited. Neither of them knew what yet, but both of them knew it was coming. Pre-dawn. The parking lot filled with figures loading gear into trucks. Breath fogging. Equipment clanking. The organized chaos of military preparation. Kate's team, Frank, would assist, but she'd have tactical command. Cole, Blake, Travis each transformed from antagonists into students. 3 other trainees. And Sarah Mitchell, 23 years old, blonde hair, and Texas drawl, young enough to be Kate's daughter. Sarah approached nervously. Ma'am, Lieutenant Commander, I just wanted to say thank you for showing us that women can do this job, that we belong. Kate studied her, saw herself 8 years ago, younger, less certain, desperate to prove something to everyone. Sarah, Kate said gently, you don't need to thank me for belonging. You already belong. The only person you need to prove anything to is yourself. Understand? Yes, ma'am. And Sarah, on this mountain, I'm not a woman leading you. I'm an operator. Judge me by my decisions, my competence, nothing else. Sarah nodded, then quieter. Do you ever get tired of it? The proving, the fighting to be seen. Kate thought about her niece's recital, about promises broken and distance growing between her and everyone she loved, about walking into rooms where she'd never be welcomed and wondering why she kept doing it. Every day, Kate said honestly, but someone has to be first. Someone has to make it easier for the next person. If I stop now, you'll have to fight twice as hard. I can't let that happen. Sarah blinked back something that might have been tears, nodded once, turned away to finish packing. Frank materialized beside Kate. You're good with them, the young ones. I remember being young, scared, certain everyone was watching for me to fail. Well, everyone's watching for you to succeed. That's a different weight. Heavier sometimes. They loaded up. 2 trucks, Kate's team in one, Frank's team in the other. They'd split at the insertion point, take different routes to the objective, see who arrived first with better tactical position. But as they drove into darkness, winding through forest roads that climbed towards snowline, Frank couldn't shake the feeling. The sense that they were driving towards something. Something that had been waiting. The truck stopped at a trailhead. Grid coordinates marked on maps. From here, 15 miles on foot through terrain that would break lesser people. Kate gathered her team, 8 total. She'd memorized every face, every skill set, every weakness. Cole strong but impulsive. Blake reliable but needs direction. Travis dangerous but finally learning discipline. Sarah inexperienced but eager. The others competent, solid, unremarkable. Rules of engagement, Kate said. We move as a unit. Nobody goes off alone. Watch your sectors. Communicate. This is training, but we treat it like real. Because the mountains don't care about training. They'll kill you just as dead. Frank's team headed north. Kate's went northwest. Different paths, same destination. Competition to drive excellence. They walked for hours, snow crunching, packs heavy with gear weapon supplies. Kate set a pace that pushed without breaking. Cole kept up easily, athletic conditioning showing. Sarah struggled, but refused to complain, jaw set with determination. Blake and Travis moved with the coordination of men who'd learned to work together. At a ridge overlook, Kate called halt, pulled out binoculars, studied the terrain ahead. Forest gave way to clearings, rock faces. The objective facility should be visible from here, 10 miles distant. She glassed the area methodically. Sector by sector, training kicking in, looking for anomalies, for things that didn't belong. Then she stopped, adjusted focus, stared. Movement, near the objective, but wrong, too organized, too tactical. She counted silhouettes, 8, maybe 9, armed, moving in formation. Cole noticed her expression. Ma'am, what is it? Kate kept watching. One of the figures turned. Light caught his weapon profile, AK pattern rifle. Not American, not training equipment. Cole, Kate said quietly, get on the radio, contact Frank. Tell him we have unknown armed personnel at the objective. Real weapons, real threat. Cole keyed his radio. Team 1, this is Team 2. We have static, harsh, and immediate. He tried again. Nothing. Ma'am, comms are jammed. Kate lowered the binoculars, looked at her team. 8 faces staring back. Young, scared, waiting for her to tell them what to do. This wasn't training anymore. This was real. And they were 15 miles from help with no communications and hostile forces between them and safety. Blake's voice shook slightly. Those are Russian weapons. I can hear them from here. AK-74 pattern. Travis added, whoever they are, they're not contractors in safety vests. Kate made a decision. We pull back, establish defensive position, figure out what we're dealing with. They withdrew to a tree line with good cover and observation. Kate kept watch while others set security. Then she gathered them close. Best case scenario, Kate said. Those are friendlies from another unit doing separate training. Worst case, they're hostile force that's penetrated our perimeter. Either way, we need to reach Frank's team and coordinate. How? Sarah asked. Comms are down. We move carefully. Stay off ridgelines. Use the terrain for concealment. If we encounter hostiles, we evade. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Our training ammunition is useless against real weapons. Cole spoke up. There's an armory cache 2 miles back. Emergency supplies for training teams. Live ammunition, real weapons. Kate considered. Splitting up violates every tactical principle. But if those are real hostiles, we need real weapons. Frank would know what to do. Frank had been in actual firefights. But Frank was miles away on a different route, and they had no way to reach him. Kate made the call that would define everything that followed. Cole, Blake, Sarah, you 3 come with me. We'll reach Frank's team. Travis, you take the others back to the armory. Get live weapons, then hold position. We'll link up at grid reference. She checked her map. Here, 2 hours. Travis nodded. Yes, ma'am. They split, Travis leading 4 trainees back down the mountain. Kate leading 3 forward, moving carefully through forest, watching for threats. The morning sun climbed higher. Snow began to melt, water dripping from branches, their tracks visible in slush. Cole moved beside Kate. Ma'am, I need to say something. What we did 2 nights ago, attacking you, that was the stupidest thing I've ever done. Not just because you kicked our asses, because we judged you before knowing you, before seeing what you really are. What am I, Cole? The real thing. Everything we pretended to be. I'm sorry it took getting humiliated to see it. Kate didn't slow her pace. Apology accepted. Now stay sharp. Eyes on your sector. They crested a ridge. Below, in a small clearing, Frank's team had stopped for a break. Kate could see them through the trees. 8 figures. Frank standing, scanning the area with the constant vigilance of a man who'd survived by never relaxing. She was about to call out when Sarah grabbed her arm, pointed. 2 figures emerging from the forest, behind Frank's position, moving with tactical precision. Weapons up, not training weapons. Real rifles with real magazines and real intent. Kate's breath caught. They were about to walk into an ambush. Frank's team had no idea. Would be caught in the open with nowhere to go. Cole whispered urgently, we have to warn them. But Kate was already moving, already calculating angles and distances and timing, already making decisions that would save lives or end them. She cupped her hands and shouted one word, loud enough to echo across the clearing. Contact! Frank's head snapped up. His team scattered instantly, training taking over, diving for cover, weapons coming up. Beautiful, disciplined chaos. The 2 figures in the trees opened fire. Automatic weapons chattering. Real bullets snapping through air. Trees exploding into splinters. Frank's team returned fire with training ammunition. Plastic rounds that did nothing. One of his trainees went down, hit in the leg. Real blood. Real screaming. Kate made another decision. Drew her sidearm, aimed carefully, fired twice. Both hostile figures dropped wounded but alive. Her shots had been precise, controlled, designed to disable, not kill. The clearing went silent except for the wounded trainee crying. Frank emerged from cover, saw Kate on the ridge. Their eyes met across distance. Understanding passed between them without words. This wasn't an exercise. This was war. And they were in the middle of it with no support, no backup, and enemies they couldn't see closing in from all sides. Frank started moving toward Kate's position, his team following, carrying their wounded. They linked up in the tree line, combining into one larger unit, 16 people now. 1 wounded, limited ammunition, no communications. Frank pulled Kate aside. What the hell is happening? Hostiles at the objective, at least 8, professional movements, foreign weapons, my guess mercenaries, and I think Colonel Warren is compromised. What makes you say that? Kate pulled out her radio, turned it on. Static, then a voice broke through. Warren's voice, but wrong, strained, frightened. All personnel, this is Colonel Warren. Stand down. Exercise is terminated. Return to base immediately. Acknowledge. Frank and Kate looked at each other. Kate keyed her mic. Colonel, what is your authentication code? Silence. Then, authentication is not required. This is a direct order. Frank took the radio. Sir, request confirmation of your status. Are you under duress? More silence, then Warren's voice barely audible. Master Chief, they have... The transmission cut. Another voice came through, accented, Russian. American soldiers, you will return to base. You will not interfere. Do this and no one else dies. Kate turned off the radio. Warren's a hostage. Whoever these people are, they're using him to control the situation. If we go back, we walk into a trap. If we push forward, we engage armed hostiles with training ammunition. Blake spoke up. Travis went to the armory. If we can link up with him, we'll have real weapons. Frank nodded slowly. Then that's what we do. We link up, we arm ourselves, and then we figure out what these bastards are really after. Cole asked the question everyone was thinking. Are we really about to fight Russians on American soil? That's an act of war. They're not Russian military, Kate said. They're contractors, mercenaries, probably hired by someone to grab something from our facility. If I had to guess, classified weapon systems, prototypes that are worth millions on the black market. Frank added, which means they're professionals, trained, experienced. They've done this before in other countries. Now they're doing it here because they think we're soft, think we'll fold. Are we going to fold? Sarah asked, voice small but steady. Kate looked at her team. Young faces, scared faces, people who'd signed up for training and gotten war instead, people who had every right to be terrified. No, Kate said simply, we're going to teach them why you don't pick fights on our mountain, in our country, with our people. Frank smiled grimly. Captain Hartwell said something similar in Kafji, right before he led us into hell and brought us all back out. Then I'm in good company, Kate said. Let's move, Travis is waiting. And we have work to do. They moved as one unit now, Kate and Frank sharing command, 2 generations of warriors leading people who'd been civilians days ago. Leading them toward a fight they hadn't chosen but wouldn't run from. Because some things were worth fighting for. Some lines you didn't cross. Some ground you defended, not because you wanted to, but because someone had to. The mountains watched, silent, ancient. They'd seen men fight and die before, would see it again. They didn't care about sides or causes or righteousness, but the people climbing through snow and forest cared about each other, about duty, about the oath they'd sworn and the uniform they wore, even when that uniform was invisible. They moved toward the armory, toward weapons, toward the moment when training became reality and every decision would matter in ways that couldn't be taken back. Behind them, hostile forces adjusted position, tracked their movement, prepared for engagement. Ahead, Travis waited with 4 trainees and a cache of weapons that would level the odds. And in the facility, Colonel Warren sat in his office with a gun to his head, watching strangers steal America's secrets, while his people died in mountains he couldn't warn them about. The exercise had become an operation. The operation had become a war, and the war was just beginning. The armory cache sat buried in a reinforced bunker half a mile from any marked trail. Emergency supplies for training teams caught in bad weather or injured personnel needing shelter. Travis and his 4 trainees had reached it 20 minutes ago and were now spreading weapons across the concrete floor like treasure. M4 carbines, real ones, with loaded magazines and spare ammunition stacked in green metal cans. 3 M249 light machine guns, grenades, body armor, medical supplies, everything you'd need if training suddenly stopped being training. Travis looked up as Kate's enlarged group emerged from the tree line. 16 people now, 1 wounded leg wrapped in field dressing but mobile. Everyone exhausted, everyone scared, everyone looking to Kate and Frank for answers they didn't have yet. We've got enough weapons for everyone, Travis reported. 300 rounds per rifle, 1,000 rounds for each machine gun, plate carriers, the works. Frank moved to inspect the cache, picked up an M4, checked the chamber, tested the action. Muscle memory from 4 decades. The rifle felt right in his hands, felt like coming home to something dark and familiar. Kate did the same, but she went further. Field stripped the weapon in seconds, checked the bolt carrier group, inspected the extractor, looking for wear, for damage, for anything that might cause malfunction when malfunction meant death. These have been maintained, she said. Recently, someone knew we might need them, or someone wanted us to have them, Frank replied. Either way, we're armed now. Question is, what we do with it. Blake spoke up. We have 16 shooters against 8 or 9 hostiles. We have the advantage. Numbers don't mean anything if they have better positions, Kate said. If they're dug in at the objective with fields of fire, they could hold us off indefinitely. We need intelligence. We need a plan. Sarah was distributing magazines when her hand froze. She'd found something else in the cache. A radio, military grade. Different frequency than their training radios. She powered it on. Static, then voices. Accented English. The hostiles were using an open channel, confident that no one was listening. Kate grabbed the radio, turned down the volume, listened. A man's voice commanding. Yuri status, packages loaded, 30 minutes to extraction point. American colonel is cooperative. Any resistance? 2 patrols encountered in forest. Neutralized with warning shots, they retreated as expected. Americans are soft, they will not interfere. Do not underestimate them. Finish quickly. Moscow is waiting. The transmission ended. Frank and Kate exchanged looks. Moscow, foreign contractors, package. This wasn't random. This was a planned operation to steal classified weapon systems. And they'd chosen this moment, this exercise, because they thought everyone would be scattered in the mountains. Easy targets, no coordination. They'd miscalculated. Cole asked, "What's the package? What are they stealing?" Frank knew. His face had gone pale. The facility stores prototype targeting systems. Next generation. Integrates satellites, drone feeds, real-time battlefield data. Lets one operator call precision strikes from anywhere on Earth. If Russia gets that technology, he didn't finish, didn't need to. Everyone understood. This wasn't just theft. This was a national security catastrophe waiting to happen. Kate checked her watch. 30 minutes to extraction. We can't stop them directly. 8 of them professional soldiers, fortified position. We take casualties we can't afford. Then what do? Travis asked. Kate smiled, cold, predatory. We don't stop them at the facility. We stop them at the extraction point. Hit them when they're moving, when they're exposed, when they think they have already won. Frank caught her meaning immediately. Ambush, L-shaped kill zone. One element fixes them in place, second element flanks. Desert Storm tactics, Kate said, but with modern execution. Master Chief, you taught this in Kafji. I refined it in Mogadishu. Between us, we can make this work. They spread a map across the bunker floor. Studied terrain. The extraction point would be the old logging road 3 miles northeast. Only place a helicopter could land safely. The hostiles would move through a narrow valley to reach it. Channeled terrain. Perfect for ambush. Frank traced routes with his finger. Team 1 sets up here. High ground. Machine guns. We lay suppressive fire when they enter the kill zone. Pin them down. Make them think that's the only threat. Kate continued. Team 2 circles wide. Comes in from the flank. They'll be focused on your position. Won't see us until we're on top of them. Crossfire. Nowhere to run. Travis studied the map. That valley has rock faces on both sides. They'll be trapped. It'll be a slaughter. It'll be justice, Frank said quietly. They came to our country, our mountain, threatened our people, tried to steal from us. Now they learn what that costs. But Kate shook her head. We disable. We capture. We don't execute. These are enemy combatants, but we're still American military. We follow rules of engagement even when they don't. Frank wanted to argue, wanted to say that mercy was a luxury they couldn't afford. But looking at Kate's face, he saw her father. Saw Captain Hartwell's absolute certainty that doing things right mattered more than doing them easy. Understood, Frank said. We disable and capture. They divided forces. Frank took 8 people, including Blake and Sarah. The 2 M249 machine guns. They'd be the hammer. The noise and fury that fixed the enemy in place. Kate took the other 8, including Cole and Travis. The M4 rifles. They'd be the blade. The silent death coming from an angle no one expected. They geared up in silence. Magazines loaded, body armor strapped tight, medical kits distributed. Each person checked their buddy's equipment. Old ritual, sacred ritual. Because the person next to you might be the only reason you survive the next hour. Cole approached Kate as she adjusted her plate carrier. Ma'am, I just want to say, if something happens out there, if things go bad, it's been an honor. Learning from you, seeing what real operators look like. Nothing's going to happen, Kate said, because we're better trained, better prepared, and we're fighting for something that matters. They're just here for money. We're here for each other. That makes all the difference. Travis joined them. My whole life I've been trying to prove I'm hard enough, tough enough, good enough. Took getting my ass kicked by someone half my size to realize being hard isn't the same as being strong. Thank you for teaching me that. Kate looked at both of them, young men who'd been enemies 3 days ago, who'd attacked her in darkness, who'd learned humility and become better for it. When we're done here, she said, I'm putting both of you up for SEAL selection. You've earned it, not because you're tough, because you're teachable. That's more important. They moved out. 2 teams, different routes, same destination. The sun was climbing toward noon, snow melting, water running in streams down rock faces. Beautiful country, the kind of place people came to find peace. They were bringing war instead. Frank's team reached their position first, high ground overlooking the valley, good cover behind rocks and fallen trees. Blake and another trainee set up the machine guns, bipods deployed, ammunition belts loaded, overlapping fields of fire that would turn the valley floor into a killing ground. Sarah lay prone beside Frank, her M4 trained downrange. She was shaking slightly, fear or cold or both. First time, Frank asked quietly. First time what? First time preparing to shoot at people who'll shoot back. Sarah nodded. Is it always this scary? Yes, Frank said. Anyone who tells you different is lying or dead. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. The trick is using it instead of letting it use you. How do you do that? Frank checked his rifle one more time. You remember why you're here, who you're protecting, what happens if you fail. Then you breathe, aim, shoot, and trust your training. Below in the valley, nothing moved yet, just wind and water and waiting. Kate's team circled wide, moving fast but quiet. They had less distance to cover but harder terrain. Steep slopes, loose rock. One wrong step would send stones cascading and alert everyone for miles. Cole moved behind Kate, matching her pace, watching how she placed her feet, how she tested each step before committing weight, how she used her rifle for balance without ever pointing it anywhere dangerous. This was training too, different from the classroom kind, the kind that happened in mountains with live ammunition and real consequences, the kind that carved itself into your bones and stayed there forever. They reached their position, dense forest on the valley's flank, 50 yards from where the hostiles would pass, close enough to smell them, close enough to see faces. Kate positioned each shooter, assigned sectors, explained sight pictures and trigger discipline, reminded them about crossfire angles and friendly fire. All the small details that meant the difference between victory and catastrophe. Then they waited. Travis lay beside Kate behind a fallen log. You've done this before. Real ambushes. 3 times, Kate said. Somalia, Iraq, another place I can't talk about. It never gets easier, but you learn to function despite the fear, despite knowing people will die and some of them might be your people. How do you live with that, the weight of those decisions? Kate was quiet for a long moment, thinking about faces she'd never forget. Names carved into memorial walls, brothers and sisters who'd followed her into fire and not come back out. You don't live with it, she said finally. You carry it, every day, every decision, and you make damn sure their sacrifice meant something, that you became worthy of the trust they placed in you. A sound, distant, mechanical, helicopter rotors beating air. That's extraction inbound, Kate whispered into her radio. All teams, weapons tight. Wait for my signal. The helicopter passed overhead, large, Russian design. It landed somewhere beyond the ridge. Now the hostiles would move toward it, would walk into the valley with their stolen technology and their certainty that they'd already won. Kate's breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped. Combat mode. The place where time moved differently and everything became simple. Sight picture, target, trigger. The basic mechanics of survival. Movement. Below, 8 figures emerging from the forest, moving in tactical formation. Professional, each man covering sectors. Weapons up. Alert but not alarmed. They wore civilian tactical gear. Black, expensive, body armor, communication headsets. The equipment of contractors who'd worked in Syria, Ukraine, Libya, who'd killed for money in a dozen countries and thought one more wouldn't matter. In the center of their formation, a man in American military uniform, Colonel Warren, hands bound, face bruised, walking with the defeated posture of someone who'd lost everything he'd sworn to protect. One of the hostiles carried a metal case, the package, the targeting system that couldn't be allowed to leave this mountain. The hostile commander was obvious, taller than the others, moving with authority. Yuri Volkov, the name they'd heard on the radio, former Spetsnaz, current mercenary, A man who'd learned to kill for his country and decided to keep killing for whoever paid best. They entered the valley, channeled between rock faces, exactly where Kate and Frank had predicted. Frank whispered into his radio, "Target acquired. Count eight hostiles, one friendly hostage. Prepare to engage." Kate responded, "Roger, on your signal, Master Chief." Frank waited, watched them move deeper into the kill zone, waited until they were committed, until turning back would be as dangerous as pushing forward. Then he gave the order that would define everything that followed. "All teams, execute." The machine guns opened up, sustained bursts, tracers arcing through afternoon light, rounds cracking against rocks, dirt exploding around the hostile formation. They scattered immediately. Professional reactions. Diving for cover, returning fire, their weapons chattering, bullets snapping overhead. The valley filled with noise and smoke and chaos. Blake held the trigger steady, sweeping fire across their position. Not trying to hit them, just keeping them pinned, making them stay low, making them focus on the threat they could see. Sarah fired controlled bursts. 2 rounds shift, 2 more rounds, just like Kate had taught her. Controlled, precise. The hostiles returned fire. Heavy volume, but shooting uphill into rocks. Most rounds went high or ricocheted harmlessly. They were pinned, exactly as planned. Yuri shouted orders in Russian. 3 of his men shifted position, trying to flank Frank's position, moving with the confidence of men who'd done this 100 times before. They never saw Kate's team coming. Cole fired first. Double tap, center mass. 1 hostile dropped. The other spun, confused, caught between 2 forces. Trapped in crossfire with nowhere to go. Travis engaged. Careful shots, aiming for legs, shoulders, anywhere that would disable without killing. 2 more hostiles went down screaming. Kate moved forward. Rifle up, advancing through forest like smoke. She caught 1 hostile trying to reposition. He saw her too late, raised his weapon. Kate shot him in the shoulder. He dropped his rifle, fell, stayed down. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, 6 hostiles were wounded and down. 1 was dead, hit by an unlucky ricochet. 1 was missing. Yuri Volkov, the commander. He'd grabbed Colonel Warren during the case. Was dragging him backward toward cover, using him as a shield, his pistol pressed against Warren's temple. "Stop!" Yuri shouted, accented but clear. "Stop or I kill him." Kate's team emerged from the forest. Frank's team advanced from the high ground. They formed a loose perimeter, 16 rifles trained on 1 man and his hostage. Kate stepped forward, weapon lowered slightly but ready. "It's over. Your team is down. Your extraction is gone. Let him go." Yuri laughed, harsh sound. "You think this is over. You think this matters. Moscow has other teams, other operations. You stop nothing." "Maybe," Kate said, "but we stopped you, here, today, on our mountain. That's enough." Warren's eyes met Kate's. He mouthed something. 2 words. "Do it." Yuri was backing toward cover, moving behind a boulder. Once he reached it, he'd have protection, could fortify, could drag this out for hours. People would die. Warren would die. Kate made a decision. The hardest kind. The kind that required absolute certainty and acceptance that you might be wrong. "Master Chief," she said quietly into her radio, "I need you to take a shot." Frank was 40 yards away. Different angle. He raised his rifle, found Yuri in his scope, but Warren was too close. Any shot risked hitting the colonel. The margin for error was millimeters. "Negative," Frank said. "No clean shot. Hostage in line." Kate's mind raced, calculating angles, distances, her position, her weapon, her training, 10,000 hours on ranges, 1,000 more in combat, muscle memory carved so deep it lived in her bones. "Then I'm taking it," she said. "Kate, you're 50 yards out, low light, moving target. That's an impossible shot. My father made impossible shots. You told me he was the bravest man you ever served with. Let me show you what he taught me." Kate dropped to 1 knee, raised her rifle, found the scope picture. Yuri's head, partially obscured by Warren, moving, 60 yards now, wind gusting, sun angle creating shadows. Her breathing slowed, Heart rate dropped. The world collapsed to nothing but reticle and target in the space between. She calculated wind, 2 knots from the east. Pushing left, adjusted half a mil. She calculated distance, 63 yards by her estimation. Bullet drop minimal but present. Adjusted sight picture fractionally. She calculated movement. Yuri backing up. Predictable pattern. Wait for the pause between steps. Her finger found the trigger. 3.5 pounds of pressure. Surprise break. The way her father had taught her when she was 12 years old with a .22 rifle and tin cans on fence posts. Katie, he'd said, shooting isn't about strength. It's about patience. About waiting for the moment when everything aligns. Then you trust yourself and commit. The moment aligned, Kate exhaled halfway. Held. The rifle fired. The bullet crossed 63 yards in a fraction of a second. Supersonic crack. Spinning. Climbing. Falling. Finding the path physics and training had calculated. It hit Yuri Volkov in the center of his forehead. Precision. Perfect. Impossible. He dropped like gravity had doubled. Dead before his body registered what happened. Warren stumbled forward. Free. Alive. Staring at the body behind him with disbelief. The valley went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Waiting. Frank lowered his binoculars. Slow. His hands weren't quite steady. He'd seen a lot of shooting in 4 decades. Combat marksmanship under every condition imaginable. He'd never seen anything like that. Holy mother of Blake whispered. Sarah just stared, mouth open. Cole said what everyone was thinking. That's not possible. That shot isn't possible. Kate lowered her rifle, cleared the chamber, safed the weapon. Her hands were steady, her face calm. Inside, she was shaking. Inside, she was thanking her father for every lesson, every hour on ranges, every impossible standard he had held her to. Because impossible was just another word for untrained. Travis moved to secure the hostiles. Zip-tied wrists, checked wounds, called out status. 6 wounded, stable, 1 KIA. All weapons secured. Frank reached Colonel Warren, cut his bonds, helped him to cover. Warren's face was battered, eyes hollow but alive, grateful. Master Chief, Warren said, voice hoarse. Lieutenant Commander, you just saved my life. Saved the operation. Saved everything. We did our job, sir, Frank said simply. That's all. Kate approached. Warren looked at her with something approaching awe. That shot, I've never seen. How did you? Training, sir. Just training. But Frank knew better. Knew it was more than training. It was talent, legacy, the accumulation of everything Captain James Hartwell had been and everything he'd taught his daughter to become. Sirens in the distance, growing louder. State police, FBI. Someone had gotten word out. The helicopter pilot had radioed when he saw the ambush triggering emergency response. Help was coming. Too late to matter, but coming. Kate sat on a rock, let her rifle rest across her knees, exhausted. Adrenaline crash hitting like a wave. Her hands started shaking now that the danger had passed. Delayed reaction. The price you paid for pushing fear aside during action. Sarah sat beside her, young face streaked with dirt and tears. Ma'am, I was terrified the whole time. I thought I'd freeze. Thought I'd fail. But you didn't, Kate said. You functioned despite the fear. That's all courage is. You did good, Sarah. Real good. Cole and Blake approached together, Travis behind them. 3 men who'd been antagonists, who'd attacked her in darkness, who'd learned hard lessons about strength and humility. Cole spoke first. Lieutenant Commander, would you really put us up for SEAL selection after everything we did? Kate looked at each of them. You made mistakes, you learned from them, you became better. That's the only qualification that matters. I'll write your recommendations personally. Whether you make it through BUDS is up to you. We won't let you down, Blake said. Don't let yourselves down, Kate replied. You have to live with who you are every day. Make sure you're someone you can respect. Frank joined them, stood beside Kate, 2 generations of warriors, old guard and new, different paths, but same destination. Your father would be proud, Frank said quietly. That shot, that leadership, that mercy. You're everything he hoped you'd become. Kate felt tears coming, pushed them back. Not here, not now, later, when she was alone. Thank you, Master Chief, for believing in me, for being the kind of man my father trusted with his life. The honor was mine, Lieutenant Commander. 2 days later, Kate stood in the facility briefing room. Official debrief, Pentagon observers, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, FBI counterintelligence. Everyone wanted answers. Kate gave her report. Detailed, precise, no embellishment. Just facts, timeline, decisions, outcomes. When she finished, the senior Pentagon observer leaned forward. Lieutenant Commander, you engaged foreign nationals on American soil without authorization. Technically, that's outside your operational parameters. Technically, sir, they engaged us first. We defended ourselves and protected classified materials from theft by foreign actors. I'd do the same thing again. I'm sure you would. Which is why I'm recommending you for the Silver Star, and why the Integrated Combat Program is being approved for full implementation. You proved conclusively that gender doesn't determine operational capacity. Performance does. Congratulations, Lieutenant Commander. You've changed the military. Kate didn't feel triumphant, felt tired, felt the weight of what it had cost. The wounded trainee who'd spent 2 days in surgery, the hostile who'd died, Colonel Warren's haunted eyes, the price of victory that never appeared in reports. The observer added one more thing. We also learned from intercepted communications that the mercenaries had inside intelligence from a compromised contractor. They knew about the exercise timing, the dispersed teams, everything. That contractor is now in federal custody. This operation was months in planning. You stopped a catastrophe. So that explained it. Kate nodded. At least that question was answered. After the debrief, Frank found her outside. They walked together toward the parking lot. Her gear was already loaded. Time to leave. You changed them, Frank said. Cole, Blake, Travis, Sarah, all of them. They came here thinking they knew what strength looked like. You showed them something different. I hope it sticks. It will, because you didn't just teach them tactics. You taught them character. They reached Kate's vehicle. She threw her duffel in back. Frank extended his hand. Military handshake. Firm. Respectful. Your father saved my life in Kafji, Frank said. You saved it again here. If you ever need anything, ever, you call me. Understand? I understand, Master Chief. And Kate, stop trying to prove you're equal. You're not equal. You're better. Your father knew that. I know it now. Make sure you know it too. Kate felt the tears coming. Let them this time. Frank held her shoulder and understood that some weights were too heavy to carry alone. She drove away as sun set behind the mountains. In her rearview mirror, Frank stood watching. Behind him, the facility where she'd been mocked and attacked and ultimately proven. Her phone rang. Video call. Her niece. Kate answered. Aunt Kate, are you coming home? The recital is tomorrow. Kate smiled through tears. Front row munchkin, I promised. And this time I'm keeping it. Really, sure. Really, I'll be there. Because some promises mattered more than medals. Some battles were less important than showing up for the people you loved. The road unwound before her, mountains fading into distance. She thought about her father. Wondered if he was watching. Hoped he was proud. She thought about Frank. About Cole and Blake and Travis and Sarah. About the people she'd changed. She thought about the shot. 63 yards. Moving target. Her father's training meeting, her skill meeting, the moment when everything aligned. Kate drove into darkness. But it wasn't dark. It was hope. The knowledge that she'd made one more path, been one more example that impossible just meant untrained. Behind her in the facility, Frank filed his reports, made phone calls that would change careers. In the barracks, Cole studied SEAL team requirements. Blake researched Bud ES. Travis wrote about leadership and humility. Sarah looked at a photograph from the firefight. Kate kneeling, rifle raised. The moment before the impossible shot. Young woman seeing her future. The mountain stood silent. Snow began to fall again, covering tracks, making it pristine like none of it had ever happened. But it had happened, and the people who'd been there would carry it forever. They'd picked the wrong fight at the wrong time with the wrong woman, And she'd taught them that strength wasn't about being loud, that courage wasn't about being fearless, that leadership was about making everyone around you better. Kate drove through the night, heading home, heading toward a little girl who needed her aunt, heading toward rest and the small moments that made all the fighting worthwhile. But she'd be back, because there were more doors to open, more people who needed to see that the impossible was possible. The mountains watched her go, silent witnesses to violence and victory. They would stand long after this was forgotten. But for now, they had watched a woman prove something that needed proving, watched her maintain honor when she could have chosen ruthlessness. That was her father's daughter. That was Captain James Hartwell's legacy. And the mountains had been honored to witness it.